All right, for phase three, we are going to start exploring designing our spreads. The spread, of course, is two pages that face each other that are, like a book. And so we are going to be using one spread per artist. So you'll have one page to talk about, the text of the artist themselves, and then you'll have one spread to, one page to deal with the artwork. You can split that up in any way, shape, or form that you want. What this video is going to show is a couple of designers' approaches to exploring variations in these layouts. Now, this is really important because you're not going to get a layout right out of the box. It's one of those things where you're going to have to work it a little bit. So this designer is just sort of playing around with a fairly straightforward layout, even though Dada is a pretty edgy movement, but was having a good time with the type. So we can see this is a good example of how our last project feeds this project. You get opportunities to explore some creative type that you probably would not have even thought of without going through that past project. Now, that's not to say that your designs are all going to look like this. This just happens to be appropriate to this movement. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say you need to pick up the design styles and take your lead from the aesthetic of that movement. And so I think she did a really nice job trying to figure that out. But she's still kind of playing around with the straightforward column. The images are more or less aligned on a grid. Nice little border treatment in the margins. So it's kind of fun. It's working. But it looks like it's a first shot out of the gate. And so it, not overly creative, but exploring scale and size and so on. And so there's the back cover. So not a bad effort for the first time out of the gate. Okay, so then this is her second round. And let's go back to the front. So change the format a little bit. She was kind of doing the 8.5 by 11, and now she's gone to a square, opening up the design opportunities, really. A square is a pretty cool shape. And so now we see the spreads getting a little more playful. She's playing around a little bit more with collage, which was very popular in that particular movement, playing around with a pull quote that is dealing with some Dada-ish typography, putting things on an angle. And is this breaking the grid? Yeah, it's breaking the grid, but that's okay because in this particular project here, structure was one of those things that they were trying to literally destroy. Now, that's not to say that the entire brochure should have that effect. You can pull a little bit from that, but in the end, you still want to think about what you're doing in terms of the actual usability of the brochure as well. So you're going to take design cues, but it's not like you're going to make the whole thing look like that, right? So here again, we can remember that. So the title's gotten a little bit larger. She's still playing around with the angled columns, a little bit more with the initial cap. Got these things, but here's still again a little bit getting better though, right? She's playing around with scale and contrast, so that's all good. It's very possible to get these designs to get really thick and filled up, so you just want to be aware of your white space. And then, when you're dealing with your descriptions, you don't necessarily have to be verbose about it. You can be, at the very least, the title, the year, and the medium. Does it need a description? It's up to you. But remember also that you can play around with scale in your body type. It doesn't all have to be the same size. And so there's a back cover there. So just kind of cruising back through this project from end to the beginning. And then this is her last version. So let me go here. And so here she ended up kind of playing around a little bit more with the playfulness of the imagery, but the columns being a little bit more straightforward. The column here is a little narrow, And basically what's happening now is we're getting a lot of type that's being hyphenated, and it's almost uncomfortable to read columns that are that narrow. So this is one of those things where you really want to maybe cut back a bit in terms of the width and make it wider, and maybe edit your text a little bit. You don't have to have a lot of text for each of these guys. As a matter of fact, a couple of paragraphs is really all you need. I'm actually encouraging you not to write long bios, only because we want to have some negative space. Okay, so so that would be my main objection to this particular design. And sometimes I don't see these until they turn them in. And then I'm like, well, it's kind of narrow. So the importance of getting your work into me early so that I can give you this kind of feedback, because this is a potential portfolio piece. As a matter of fact, it should get in your portfolio. So you want it to be as good as possible, right? So, and there's your back cover. So you can see that she played around with the layout possibilities, and that's what I want you to do for phase 3. Here's another designer who was just playing around with style. And in this case here, he was dealing at first with one person's, artwork, and just trying to figure out what that was going to look like. How am I going to handle the type? The thing that really bugs me is it should be supreme, so that should be RE, not ER. So be careful of those sorts of mistakes. Using quote marks as graphic elements, so keep in mind that there's a lot of things that you can do with this. This is a creative layout, so I want you to explore possibilities. Okay, so this is just the same guy multiple times. All right, so notice that he's really worked the layout, he's worked the style, he's really played around with the variety of possibilities, and this is what I want you to do in this phase. I want you to take one or two of the artists and play around with the layouts. See if, get the style going, get your typography going, get the graphic elements going, look for continuity elements. These are the things that I want you to think about. Okay, so another artist, in here playing around with a variety of possibilities. And so this isn't a complete book. This is just explorations. And so, like I said, take two of your artists and just have fun playing around with the possibilities. You can see here, the influence of our last project, playing around with, different kinds of breaking up the text into different possibilities. I also want you to explore typefaces. A lot of people just throw Times New Roman at the text. I'm like, why would you do that? We have, only about 1,000 million, typefaces to pick from. So be creative about it. Don't limit yourself. Okay. So those are some possibilities that I want you to think about. Again, make sure that you get your studies up sooner than later so that I can take a look at things and head off disasters at the pass. And that way we will have a successful final. All right, I hope that helps.